The last train to cars. The first time I saw the train, I thought I was losing my mind. It was nearly midnight. Snow was falling sideways across the empty valley, and I was standing beside a railway line that hadn't been used in over 30 years. The track ahead were broken, not damaged, gone. An entire section had collapsed into a ravine decades earlier. Yet through the storm, I saw the beam of a light emerge from the darkness. Then came the sound, a train whistle, low, distant, impossible, and moving directly toward me. To this day, I wish I had left right then, because what I eventually discovered near that abandoned railway line still keeps me awake at night. And I have never told the entire story until now. In the winter of 2019, I worked as a railway infrastructure inspector for a private contractor in Eastern Turkey. Most of my assignments involved documenting aging rail lines, bridges, and tunnels that were either being repaired or permanently retired. It was not exciting work, mostly measurements, photographs, reports, and long drives through isolated regions. That December, I was assigned to inspect a section of a abandoned railway near Kars. The line had once connected several remote settlements close to the Armenian border. In 1984, a passenger train derailed during a snowstorm. Official reports blamed ice accumulation and structural failure. 23 people died. The route was eventually closed. A newer line replaced it years later. My company wanted updated documentation before portions of the track were removed entirely. I arrived in Kars during one of the coldest weeks of the year. The city looked frozen in time. Stone buildings, narrow streets, snow piled against walls, the kind of cold that burns your lungs. The abandoned railway stretched through valleys and mountains west of the city. Most of it was inaccessible by vehicle. I planned to spend 4 days surveying the route and photographing remaining infrastructure. Simple, routine. At least that is what I believed. The first warning came from an old hotel owner. I mentioned my destination while checking in. His expression changed immediately. You are going to the old line? I nodded. Only for work. The man hesitated, then asked a strange question. Will you stay there after sunset? I laughed probably. His face remained serious. Don't. I assumed he was talking about the weather. The mountains could become dangerous after dark. But before walking away, he added something else, something that stayed with me. If you hear the whistle, don't follow it. The next morning, I drove toward the inspection area. The landscape was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Endless white fields, dark hills, ruined stone buildings scattered across the valley. Hours passed without seeing another vehicle. By late afternoon, I reached the section I planned to survey. The tracks emerged from a narrow mountain pass before crossing a frozen valley. Everything looked abandoned, silent, perfectly still. I spent the day taking photographs and recording measurement. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. As sunset approached, I set up camp inside a maintenance shed beside the tracks. The structure had no electricity, no running water, just four walls and a roof. The nearest village was over 15 miles away. Night arrived quickly. The temperature dropped below freezing. Wind rattled the walls. Outside, snow drifted across the track. I ate a simple meal and reviewed my notes. Around 10 o'clock, I heard the whistle. One long note, faint, somewhere beyond the mountains. I froze. The sound came again, longer this time. A train whistle. I immediately tried explaining it away. Maybe another railway line, maybe wind, maybe machinery. Yet something felt wrong. The sound seemed too clear, too close. I stepped outside. The valley was empty, nothing moved, no lights, no vehicle, only darkness and snow. Then I heard it again closer. The unmistakable whistle of an approaching train. My stomach tightened because there were no active rail lines anywhere nearby. And the sound was getting louder. I stood beside the track listening. The rails beneath my boots began to vibrate, very slightly, then again, a rhythmic tremor, exactly what you would expect from an approaching locomotive. I knelt and placed a gloved hand against the steel. The vibration was real. I felt it. The whistle sounded again, much closer now, emerging from the mountain pass ahead. Then I saw the light, a single bright beam piercing the snowstorm. At first, I felt relief. A maintenance vehicle, perhaps. Some official train I hadn't been informed about. But as the light approached, the relief vanished because the train was not slowing down and it was heading towards a section of a track that no longer existed. I knew the route. I had inspected it earlier that day. 2 miles ahead, the line ended at a collapsed bridge. Nothing could pass beyond that point. Nothing. Yet the train continued approaching. Fast, far too fast. The beam grew larger, brighter, then suddenly it disappeared. Not gradual fading, no turn, no change in direction, gone. The whistle stopped, the vibration ceased, the valley fell silent. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes, unable to move, unable to understand what I had just witnessed. Eventually, I convinced myself there had to be a rational explanation, a distant train, atmospheric distortion, fatigue, anything. But deep down, I knew something was not right. Because before the light vanished, I had noticed something impossible. There was no secondary lights, no cabin lights, no marker lights, just a single headlamp moving through the darkness, like an eye watching, searching, and coming directly toward me. The next day, I continued my inspection. I didn't mention the incident to anyone, partly because I felt embarrassed, partly because I was not entirely sure it had happened. Around midday, I reached the collapsed bridge. The ravine below was nearly 200 feet deep. Snow covered everything. The wreckage from the 1984 accident had supposedly been removed years ago. Yet, while photographing the area, I noticed something unusual, a metal object protruding from the snow near the bottom of the ravine. Curiosity got the better of me. After a difficult climb, I reached it. The object turned out to be a part of an old train carriage, twisted, rusting, half buried. That was not particularly surprising. What surprised me was what I found inside, a suitcase. The leather was cracked but intact, somehow preserved by the code. I forced it open. Inside were our personal belongings, clothes, letters, a notebook, and a train ticket. The date printed on the ticket was January 12, 1984, the day of the derailment. Then I noticed writing inside the notebook. Most pages were damaged, but several remained readable. The final entry simply said, "The man in the next carriage keeps asking people to look out the windows." Nothing else. No explanation, no name. Just that sentence. I stared at it for a long time. A strange chill moved through me, and it had nothing to do with the temperature, because I suddenly remembered something. The official accident report mentioned 12 carriages, yet photographs showed only 11 recovered from the ravine. At that time, investigators assumed one had been destroyed beyond recognition. But standing there among the wreckage, I began to wonder, what if they had been wrong? What if one carriage had never been found? And what if it was still out there somewhere, continuing its journey through the snow?